Hello and welcome back to Tuff Love. My name is Robert Kandell. Very excited to have you back with a really special guest today, Michelle Masters of NLP Marin. And I had the pleasure of working with her. I took a course with her in September that really knocked my socks off. And she promised more money and more energy will coming in at the beginning of the class. I'm like, yeah, whatever. And it's true. It worked. And I went there specifically before the book launch because I wanted to find out where my internal blocks. And basically, this shit works. I just have to put it that way. She's amazing. The work is amazing. And this interview is truly amazing. If you want to find the basics of how to change your relationship to money, this is the place to be. So I'm very excited to present this episode now. And you can also find out about her book, the courses she teaches. Everything's available in the show notes. For more shows, please visit robertkandell.com. And if you feel so inclined, I'd be so grateful. Leave a review, add some stars to your favorite podcast app. Let's get the show cooking. All right, let's now join me and Michelle on this week's version of Tuff Love. Hello and welcome back to Tuff Love. My name is Rob Kandell, and I am super excited, one, to be back after the book launch, after all the experiences of the last couple of weeks, but with my special guest, Michelle Masters, who Morgan was the one to really point me out. She was the one starting to stalk her on her videos and listen. We would, drive in the car and listen to you talk. And I've also heard about you and NLP Marin with several friends, many friends, who speak specifically about the integrity of who you are in the world and what you bring into the world. And so I wanted to say your reputation preceded you, but as one of one mastery, to integrity, especially around this topic we'll be getting into, the concept of NLP and money magic. So, and then I took the class in Marin in September, and I can tell you, you said in the class, like, you'll take the class and all these things will happen to you. And I was like, part of my New York cynical brain was like, yeah, well, we'll see what happens, but it's been true. You've delivered on your promise, more energy, more clients, more money, successful book launch, et cetera, blah, blah, blah about me. But really, you talk your talk and walk your walk. And I'm just really thrilled to have you on to the show. So welcome, Michelle.
Oh, thank you, Robert. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so much pleasure. So let's talk about, first, I'd love to just really chat about NLP for a second, because
Sure.
I think it means a lot of things to a lot of different people.
Yes.
I know enough about it to be dangerous. I probably misquoted it more times than I like to imagine. So maybe if you could just kind of give us a little history lesson in what NLP actually is.
Well, it's got a long and colorful history, and some of it incredibly boring. So the kind of net is some really bright guys figured out a way to take people who were geniuses in their field, who could do things that other people with the same training couldn't do, and to try and notice what were these people, these geniuses, doing that was different, that was creating extraordinary results that they weren't even aware they were doing. And they kind of just kept modeling that down until they discovered some things that they could replicate the changes. Like they could, if we do this thing that he did, look, this thing happens. Or if we do what she did here, this happens. And so in intervening years, there's been a lot more accumulated under the umbrella of NLP, and some original discoveries as well about how people process their information and how that can be used to create change. So it's a bunch of tools and understandings all around communication and change.
And so change work, I think you said that term quite a bit during our time together.
Right.
And the practices you had, to me, felt both counterintuitive and intuitive at the same time. Like, I don't want to give away the course too much, but, we would step on cards and we would move around in chairs. And so can you give us like the basics of what change work you seem to have most powerful and how that actually works for people?
Perhaps the best analogy that most people will have an understanding of is software, because human beings, we have software. A lot of what we do when we want change is we often try to force ourselves. We try to use willpower, we try to use force. But imagine if your computer's running a software program that's not delivering what you want. But willpower is not going to do diddly to change the software, right? You're just going to end up yelling at your computer, which, trust me, I've done, it doesn't work. So it's not about willpower, and it's not about defeating ourselves. What it is this gives us a way to figure out the software that is running and rewrite it so it produces what we want. And just like with software, when you rewrite software, it stays rewritten. You don't have to encourage the software. Come on, go, you can do it. You know, you don't have to do affirmations. You are powerful software. You don't have to hold your software accountable. Like when it's rewritten, it just runs differently. And this is what we can do with these NLP techniques, is find out the patterns that are running, in this case around money, but it could be around anything, that are messing up our health, our relationship, our money. Find out what's running and revise it so that it's naturally designed to produce what we do want. And so those cards on the floor, that is one way of creating new associations, because human beings make associations faster than any other creatures. We are just association making machines. And the beliefs we have, those all started as associations. Most of the things that we believe about ourselves and the world are in place by age 3, and pretty much all of it by 6. And those all started as associations. So what a lot of people try to do is they try at 30 or 40, they try to create new beliefs, but the ones from 3 or 4 are still running. So what this allows us to do is get access to the patterning that's running from 3 or 4 and change that with new associations. This is what those cards on the floor allow us to do. When I'm working one-on-one with people, I can often do this in other ways. I can give somebody a squeeze on the arm to create a new association. But when I've got, 60 to 100 people in a room, I can't, unless I go seriously Ganesh, I can't run around, squeeze everybody's arms. So these pieces of paper on the floor, they really, they can do the same function.
I think this is, a new thing for me. The concept that most of your belief systems are 3 to 6, and the more, many different teachers teach this, but I think it's really important to believe that, because I think as adults, we tend to be a little arrogant. We tend to think, I am the master of my own domain. I am in control. Like you said, I can use willpower. I can use force, especially masculine aspects of ourselves. I can use force to dominate my will to do what I want to do. But then there's that little 3 and 6-year-old inside of us running the show, pulling the levers, and pointing us in the direction that we're not even conscious of.
Yeah, and they're operating from different parts of the brain. So that 30-year-old, that 40-year-old is operating out of the cortex, and that 3 to 6-year-old is operating from a different area of the brain.
Please go over that, because I think that was fascinating to learn that part.
Well, sure. Okay, so here's a little, because nobody gave us a user manual for our brain, right? We got this incredible kind of tissue up here doing amazing things, and none of us know how to operate it.
Mm-hmm.
And we tend to relate to it as though it is just one thing, like a monolith. But there's a bunch of different brains in there operating independently, occasionally in concert with each other, but the interfacing is really spotty. So you've got the cerebral cortex, the big shiny lobes we're so very proud of as human beings, like to lord over the rest of the animal kingdom and claim dominion. These are what do things like abstract thought, creativity, meaning-making machines. Humans are meaning-making machines. Time, we're the only creatures who do time. So a whole lot going on up here, but these are not fully developed until, well, for women, it's somewhere between 20 and 25 years old. For men, it's somewhere between 25 and 30, or as my friend Carl says, somewhere between 25 and death. It's slower to develop in men. And we've been teaching this for a long time, but my partner and I went on a Jeep tour in Sedona, and nobody else signed up for the tour, so we had the guide to ourselves. So he was telling us stories because he volunteers on rescue missions. Mm-hmm. And he told us that 90% of the rescues they do are men 30 and under. 90% of the snake bites they treat are men 30 and under. And he said of those 90%, 95% are bites to the hands or the face. These are not bites to the feet and ankles, which gives you an idea of what was going on right before the snake had had enough. Like they have a joke. What's the first words of English a snake learns? And it's, dude, hold my beer. Like the circuitry that could say a selfie with a snake is not a good idea is not yet fully functional. Consequences, that's the last part of the brain that comes online. So then you have your emotions, which come online. Research says around birth, our experience is earlier. And then there's like the oldest part of the brain, the reptile brain, some people call it the creature brain, it is fully functional in utero. We share this with every creature on the planet, and it's in charge of your survival. It does not care if you are happy. It only cares that you're alive. This cares if you're happy. This only cares that you're alive. And so for the first couple years, kids are existing in an environment, very little of this is up and running, but this is on alert to make sure that kid survives.
Can I just interrupt? So,
Absolutely.
so part of this is vocal only. So when she said this part is running, you're
sorry.
talking about, it's part of podcast as well. So the part that's not running is the cortex. The part that is running, you're pointing to the reptilian brain. Okay,
Correct.
keep going. Thank you.
Okay. So if a kid is in a situation, and the parts of the brain that could distinguish between a physical threat and an emotional threat, those don't develop until much later. In fact, I meet many adults who still aren't tracking the difference between an emotion and a physical threat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, partly because of old patterning, but a kid cannot tell the difference. So for a kid, parents yelling registers for them as a potential death threat. And so their system will go into full alert. This part, the reptile part of their brain will do its best to make sure they survive. It'll run either fight, flight, or freeze. These are its three options for survival. And it will kind of take a recording of what was going on. So look, let's say mom and dad were arguing about money. All sorts of associations will get created about money. Money dangerous, money cause of arguments, money stressful, money this, money that, money blah, 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 right? Now in a perfect world, when a kid hit 18, their software would update. But unlike most people's smartphones, our brains are not designed to update. So all of us are running the original operating system. I imagine if you had a phone that was trying to use an operating system from 1980, right? This is what our brains are doing. And so at a certain point, the disconnect between what the 21st century parts of us are wanting to experience and the operating system we came in creates all kinds of trouble. So what this work actually lets us do is this is finally a way to update the operating system without having to die and get reborn, which means going through middle school again. Who wants to do that?
And I love the reading I've been doing, read Carl's book. I haven't read your book yet, though Morgan just ordered it. We'll talk about that in a bit. Is really often the creature brain and the human brain that is referred to as the cortex, are often in conflict.
Yes.
Like your creature brain is saying, well, I survived an abusive situation.
Yes.
Abuse must be right, so I'm going to attract an abusive situation.
Yeah.
And your human brain's like, no, I don't want to be in another abusive situation.
Yes.
And so the conflict between the two, the war between the two, is often what I perceive. And please correct me if I'm wrong. The dichotomy we feel inside of ourselves.
Correct.
The indecision, the unknowing. I think that was such a huge impact when I read that for the first time.
Yeah, the creature only cares about survival again. So it will take a recording of whatever's going on. And if they don't die, then the creature regards that as survivable. So in worst case scenario, kid grows up getting hit on the head with a hammer every day. If they don't die, the creature neurology will regard a daily dose of hammer hitting as proven to be survivable. Not getting hit on the head with a hammer, it has no data. It cannot imagine, because that is not the part of the brain that imagines. So if that kid grows up, leaves the house at 18, goes a few days without getting hit on the head with a hammer, the human brain is like, eureka, finally. And the creature brain starts getting really nervous, and that person will find themselves hanging around hardware stores looking for people with hammers. And if they can't get somebody to play that game with them, they'll spend a whole lot of money in therapy explaining hitting themselves with the hammer. But as soon as that happens, the creature is like, okay, we're good for another 23 hours and 59 minutes. Makes the human nuts. The human goes to therapy, the human journals, the human joins groups, hammer hitters, and those who love them. And the creature just runs its patterning.
I think it's so phenomenal. So phenomenal.
Yeah.
Amazing. So let's take this away from a theoretical of the hammer hitting, which is fine graphic. Let's say someone who was raised by a narcissist, or someone who was raised with someone in abusive childhood, and then they're magnetizing an abusive partner.
Mm-hmm.
How would NLP, or how would the change work? What would be some of the things you would recommend to input new software so they didn't have to keep magnetizing and repeating those childhood behaviors?
Yeah. Because when it comes to picking a partner, the human parts of us pick a fine individual with whom we can love and grow and share. The creature goes looking for mom or dad. It's called imprinting. Generally, whoever was more dangerous. And guess which part of our brain is in charge of chemistry? It's the creature. It's not the human brain, which is why you can often find somebody, they're, on paper, they're such a good person, and there's just no chemistry. That's because the creature can't find some version of mom or dad. So it is called imprinting. We share this with every creature on the planet. Again, they did these kind of awful studies with baby ducks.
Right.
When the baby ducks were hatched, the mother duck wasn't there. What there was a yellow balloon that scientists would pull along with a string, and the little ducks followed along. When those little ducks grew up to be big ducks, and it was time to look for a partner, they went looking for balloons, not ducks. That's imprinting. And so the same thing happened in California. They were raising condors in captivity because they were endangered. They would raise them until sexual maturity and release them. And the condors would go looking for lab technicians because those are the people, that's what raised them. So now they raise them and they feed them with these kind of dorky looking condor puppets. But at least it's more in the general direction. So that's, human beings share this with creatures. So some part of us is always going to look for mom and dad. The work that I end up doing a lot with people around this is called re-imprinting. And what you're doing is you're actually giving the younger parts of the brain a visceral experience of surviving more the kind of relationship they want to have. You actually you're inputting, so to speak, pictures and sounds and feelings and even smells and tastes, if you can, of what it looks like, sounds like, feels like, smells like, tastes like when you're being loved and cared for in the ways you want. Now, here's the thing about the creature neurology. The reptile neurology cannot tell the difference between a real, imagined, or remembered experience. And so this is actually the only reason going to the movies is any fun at all. Because your cortex can go, you know what, I'm 25 miles inland, air-conditioned theater, chance of shark attack, relatively low. Creature brain sees a shark on the screen, has a response. That's what gets your heart rate up anytime you watch a movie or even read a book. Is the picture you're making in your head as you read that the creature neurology responds to. So it can't tell the difference between what quote unquote actually happened and if you create a different experience for that part of the brain that was developing then. So there's ways of doing it. It's not something you can really do on yourself. Like I've been doing this for 25 years now. When I have something come up, I go see somebody else because you will be blind to your own blind spots. But this is something that a skilled practitioner can do so that your system naturally starts magnetizing, to use your words, different kinds of people and relationships, or different money, or fill in the blank.
Beautiful. I love the concept of he or she or they look so good on paper. Your cortex is like analyzing the paperwork, and then the creature brain is looking for the danger. That's, again, another really valuable and a human thing, because we're so confused. Like they look so good, they felt so good, they were such good conversationalists, and then they turn into a narcissist. How did that happen?
He wasn't drinking when I met him, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's shift a little bit to money.
Okay.
You have a book called Money Magic, which was released last month. It's available on Kindle and in paperback. Morgan just purchased it, so we're happy to read that soon. You're also doing a special this weekend for the Kindle and the paperback. It's available on December 15th and 16th at a significantly reduced price.
Yeah, we're going to drop the paperback down to $9.99 and the Kindle down to like $3.49 for 2 days for holiday shopping.
Beautiful. Excellent. Definitely get it for the ones you love, especially the ones who are making money or spending the money in your household. So, my experience of money is pretty much one as someone growing up with money challenges and charges, growing up with a lot of connotation around money. Now, as a professional consultant, helping small businesses with money, people are kind of really fucked up around money. It's basically the main thing. And so, can you give us just some introductory viewpoints about what you see in terms of people in the relationship to money and things that kind of the same thing that pops up over and over again?
Yeah, well, I would say people are really have all kinds of conflicting experiences around money, um, and a lot of them not good. So there's, I would say, three main ways that people get themselves stuck around money. And the first is that old kind of creature patterning, those old beliefs, those old associations that we grew up with. You know, you have to work. Oh my God, how many times do I hear this a day working with clients? You have to work hard to make money.
Hmm.
This is so not true, by the way. How many people do you know who are working their buns off who aren't making any money? And there are people making good money who frankly aren't working that hard. It has nothing to do with hard work. But that's one of the biggest ones. So all these old associations, money is hard to come by. You have to sacrifice to get money. Money causes stress. Money causes problems. Money causes envy. All these old associations, which become beliefs, are and eventually they are so automatic we don't even see them as beliefs. People will say, well, that's just the way it is. That's just how you do the business. Well, that's just what you have to do to make money. Those are really core beliefs. When someone tells you, and whenever someone tells you, oh, that's just how it is, you're hearing a core belief. You're hearing their core belief about how the world operates, because there is no one way anything works. So that's the first way, is these old associations, and a lot of them we picked up at home, because that's where we learn almost everything, since most of our patterning is in those first 3 to 6 years, and that's the people who are around. And it doesn't even have to be that mom or dad were fighting. It could be that they are sacrificing. They're not doing what they want because they think they can't have money. You know, it comes in a lot of different flavors. The second, and we can talk more about any of these three categories, the second main way that people get stuck around money is around their sense of worth. Because we will not let ourselves have more than we think we deserve. And I meet very few people who have a really true sense of their own worth. Now, your sense of worth, that one is in place by 3 years old. So basically, what you think you deserve in life, how much money, how much love, how much health, how much good things, how much happiness you think you deserve, your system has decided that by about 3. Now, you show me a 3-year-old who is undeserving of love and good things in the world. But those decisions are made in response to the experiences we find ourselves in those first few years. And it's not always even that, you know, we had a narcissistic parent. We could have had a very loving parent, but a parent who didn't have a sense of their own worth. So there's no way that a kid can really get a sense of theirs. So when we have an impaired sense of our own worth, if we get more than we think we deserve, we will find a way to make it go away. We will get sick, we'll incur a big bill, something will happen. You read all the time about celebrities or athletes who make a lot of money really young, and then they blow their lives up fantastically. In Britain, they have a term, lotto louts, for people who win the lottery and then spectacularly screw their lives into the ground. Those are people whose worth cannot support. The foundation of their identity is not, the worth that their identity is based on is not strong enough to support that amount of whatever. Attention, money, fame. And so they get it to go away, or it cracks the foundation. It's just like if you're building a building, the bigger the building you want, the stronger the foundation you need. And in the case of most of us, if you think of our foundation, I'll tell you a story that it's a useful metaphor. I had a friend who bought a house that everybody tried to talk her out of. It had a few problems. There was like burned out mattresses and furniture in the front. There was a flea infestation. There was arsenic in the well water. There were bare wires stuck into electrical outlets. There was a heater giving off lethal doses of carbon monoxide. But here's the thing that got me the most. The house is built on a slope, and part of the house was sitting on the ground and part was supported by beams and posts. The load-bearing beam that the house was supposed to be resting on, there was a 6-inch gap between the load-bearing beam and the bottom of the house. And what someone had done to bridge that gap is they had put in 20 quarter-inch shims. Now, a shim is a piece of wood like a quarter-inch thick, like a few centimeters thick, and a little square. Like it's like what you would put under a restaurant table to keep it from wobbling. They put 20 of those in, and she said, I think there was even a matchbook in there. I remember seeing it. 20 of those were what was between her house and its foundation. And this is in California, where the earth likes to move around a lot. I saw that as a problem. So that was the first thing she fixed. Most of us in our identity, we have places that are sitting on solid ground and places that are held up by shims and matchbooks. And so the more weight that gets put on there, like the older we get and the bigger our lives get, if the foundation is shaky, the entire structure gets shaky. So that's your sense of worth. And then the third way that people get themselves stuck, and this is probably the biggest, is something called unconscious family loyalties. As human beings, we have an incredibly strong pull to belong. People will die to belong. And sadly, we experience our belonging most viscerally when we are like the people we come from. Like we tend to compute our belonging in terms of conformity. When we have it better than the people we come from, on an unconscious level, our belonging feels threatened. It feels wrong to have it better when other people are struggling. So we've all heard about survivor guilt. If someone survives a tragedy, they feel guilty because they survived and others didn't. Same is true around money. If our family struggled around money, it feels for some part of us wrong for us to have more. I mean, you go to a restaurant, if one person's food comes before everybody else, very few people will start eating because it feels weird. And we know that food is coming. Now imagine if we didn't know if they were ever going to get food, then it starts to be even weirder to sit there and enjoy your ribs or whatever it is. It just feels weird. So this unconscious signaling system is one of the biggest things that limits people's money. It's the ways they will try and ensure their belonging by not having it too much better. It's not conscious. Quite often, consciously, they're all on board with, no, I want more. But unconsciously, it's a tough gig.
That's beautiful. I know people listening, hopefully you're not feeling the gut punches. Because I did. I have all three. I can feel them all. And I've been working on myself for 20 years, and they're still there. Like I sold my shares in a company and then started a second company that failed miserably. Was it the luck of the draw? Was it, like bad timing? Or was it that I just didn't believe I was worthy of living a life of ease? And it really is so important, the work of what you're doing, of just revealing, because we get so mad at ourselves. Like, I'm not doing enough. I'm not working enough. It's like chasing something, but underneath, like you said, the foundation, there's a bunch of shims that have your whole foundation rocky. So thank you for just expressing that so clearly, I think, which hopefully will enlighten listeners to be like, oh, I'm hoping there's a lot of, so people can make some appropriate changes rather than beating themselves up that they're not, quote, succeeding.
And I meet so many people who say, but I've worked on this like you for 20 years.
Right.
And it's like, I know. And if you haven't rewritten the software,
right,
it's never going to change.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have me questioning, I'll be honest, questioning kind of my techniques with coaching, like how to up level those specific things. And, NLP training is something that both Morgan and I are interested in to really develop these skills, because I can see just the benefit of the unconscious programming that's running the show.
Yeah, it's consciously, you can pay attention to between 5 to 9 things at any time.
Mm-hmm.
Unconsciously, your system is processing upwards of 2 million things per second. That's where our huge processing power is. And so once we get that to start working for us, to start working towards what we want, then our work, our conscious work, then becomes pretty much just getting clear on what we want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful. So your main, the book is the big thing, the big gift to the world on how to up-level people's ideas around money magic. You also teach workshop. You're doing that internationally. You're in California in April,
Mm-hmm.
London in September, and then you said Hong Kong and Taiwan in March.
Yeah, Taiwan in March 23, 24, and Hong Kong March 30, 31.
And
That
people
will also be with a translator in Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, it's with a translator into Cantonese, and in Taiwan with a translator into Mandarin.
Okay, so let's riff off that for a second. So in the different cultures, just the three we mentioned, let's just look at Hong Kong versus California versus London, 3 distinct cultures. Do you still see the same attributes, or are they different based on different cultures in terms of people's relationship to money?
It's an excellent question. They're mostly the same, and there are some cultural differences that are quite striking. For instance, in the United States, when we talk about these unconscious family loyalties, they are sort of unconscious, and people get it, and it's sort of a new concept. In Asia, it's explicit. It's like, oh no, you will take care of your parents. Oh no, it is your job to make them happy. Oh, it is your job to do what they want. It's not subtle. It's explicit in Asia that it is seen as the children's job to do what their parents want and make their parents happy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so ingrained in our society, independence, and also ownership and OZs down the line.
What are OZs?
OZs, I owe you, you owe me.
Oh,
I do this for you, the commerce-based reality.
yeah.
I wanted to speak about one exercise that was such an impact on me that I don't know if you can do it justice in here, but really had a huge impact on me. And it was one where we're talking about father and money.
Yes.
The confusion of connecting, because a lot of love, a lot of my father's love for me was imbued through money. He used the money to communicate his love for me.
Yes.
And then at the same time, when he was unhappy with me, he used money to withhold the money and the love in the same time. And so I'm going to butcher this exercise, but it's really like, you're my dad, you're not money. I've confused you with money, you're my dad. And so maybe if you could just speak briefly about this really powerful exercise, what's behind it and how it can impact people.
Yeah, this is the 3-chair exercise. It's actually in the book. That's one of the exercises that is in the Money Magic book. So anybody can download that and go through it or order it off Amazon. It was originally a Fritz Perls technique called perceptual positions that I adapted to money to see how people were relating to money, their unconscious relationship to money. And often what it pops up is some ways they are relating that they're not aware of. So a common example is there will be, they'll experience themselves as disconnected from money, or they'll experience judgment coming from money, or fill in the blank. And one of the things that I discovered is that when you hear that, what you are hearing is someone in the family. Because the energy of money is actually, it's when there's not family stuff mixed in, the energy of money always shows up as this really warm, sweet, benevolent kind of energy. When anything else shows up, when there's some sort of disconnection, some sort of judgment, something like that, that's someone in the family's energy that's being projected onto money. Usually a parent, sometimes a grandparent. Sometimes some people have multiple people's energy projected onto money. So this exercise gave a way to first off notice whose energy is that that you've been projecting onto money, and to start to name that. Oh, okay, that's not money. That's my mother. That's my father. That's not money. That's this. And to start to mentally separate those, and even visually, so someone can start to have an experience of money separate from their relationship with their parents. I mean, one of the things when somebody says, I feel really disconnected to money, I will say, who are you most disconnected from? And it's not subtle. It's fairly straightforward. A lot of money stuff is father stuff, and it's not always father stuff, but a lot of money stuff is father stuff. And sadly, some people are like this, it's not, sometimes it's mothers, but usually it's fathers, that this is their way of expressing love. And one of the complications of that is, if that is the only way a parent can express love, then children often will keep themselves in a position where they need that from their parents so that their parent has a way to love them. And this can continue well into adulthood, and that's one of the really sad consequences. A child will always make sure that daddy can love me in this way, or dad has a way to love me, and if money's it, then I'll always need his money since I always want his love. But getting some of that sorted out and straightened out begins to make possible for somebody to have their own relationship with money and their own experience of this incredibly beautiful, warm, supportive energy that money actually is.
Beautiful. And first off, when you said money is bright and magical and light, my first impression was like, what? No, It's not. Money is challenging and difficult. But then the more you talked, I'm like, oh, that's the bias. That's number one, old, negative beliefs around money.
Yes.
And also, I really want to say, that exercise alone, I think, is worth the book. It was so impactful, and I'm not going to do it justice on this call, but just you sit across from money, and then you take your dad's energy out of it, and then it's just with this one exercise where it just epically changed how I looked at money, because my dad was to the left, and he was just being dad and being Joe, doing what he's doing. And money was by itself, and the isolation of his energy out of it. I don't know if I'm making any sense whatsoever, but the point was so powerful. And that alone, I think, is just so magical, the work you've done.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, that is one that I still do every couple months on myself, just to see, because occasionally my relationship and money will drift.
Yeah.
And the revelation, and it did come from having doing this workshop all over the world and over and over again, of noticing that when all that stuff gets cleared up, the energy of money always shows up as this incredibly warm, sweet, a little detached, like it doesn't have an agenda, but like so there, so present and available. And that was a real eye-opener for me. Because it's not like it's not waiting for us to earn it, to deserve it. It is just this, it is one of the ways I think the universe wants to love us. And it's right there.
Yeah.
And that was huge. That's been a huge revelation. I was in Hong Kong teaching, and I did this exercise. This exercise, ever since I started doing it at Money Magic, it spread like wildfire. So it's shown up in a lot of different coaching seminars now, because it's so easy and it's so powerful. But I was in Hong Kong and I did it, and after I did it with this woman, and she felt disconnected from money originally. And afterwards, this fellow raised his hand and he said, I don't know what her problem was. Like, I would have just run and grabbed it. He said, so I don't have a problem with money, right? And I thought, yeah. So I had him come up and do the same thing. And I said, so what's it like when you're across the money? He said, I just want to run and grab it. I love it. And I said, okay, just for a minute. Instead of that being money, let's have you imagine that over there is the energy of blessings. And he went, oh, and sat back. He said, well, that's a lot calmer. And so he was mistaking actually fear for enthusiasm. But when it became the energy of blessings, which is really what it's like, then his system could kind of calm down and actually notice the energy better. But until then, he would have thought he loved money, and it was actually fear and desperation masquerading as enthusiasm.
Beautiful. Well, incredible work. Incredible. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Do you want to let people know how they can find you and how they can do this special book deal on the 15th and 16th of December?
Sure. My website is Michelle Masters NLP, N as in neuro, L as in linguistic, P as in programming.com. You can also email me through there, and the book is on Amazon, and you can get it right now if you don't want to wait. And this weekend I'm going to lower the price so that if you want to get it for yourself or others, Christmas gifts, it'll be half price or less, half price for the paperback and even less for the Kindle. So it's on Amazon in the US, the UK, Canada, and Australia. That's where it's listed. So you'd pick the one closest to you and get it there.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an honor, and thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you, Robert. It was a joy to be with you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining me for Tuff Love. I had a good time. I thought it was amazing, and it really was a great representation of who Michelle is in the world and the work she does. So please check her out at michellemastersnlp.com. Some really incredible guests coming up next year in 2019. Dr. Robert Glover, No More Mr. Nice Guy, is coming. I have some Navy SEALs coming. For more shows, please visit robertkandell.com. Leave us some reviews. Leave us some stars on your favorite podcast app. And if you're listening now, happy holidays. And I hope 2019 is amazing. It's going to be for me, and I hope it's amazing for you. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you next week.